What if everything you've ever struggled with, the self-doubt, the need to prove yourself, the feeling that you're somehow not quite enough, what if all of it came from one single source? One wound, formed before you even had the words to describe it. Alfred Adler believed it did. And once you understand this concept, you will never see human behavior the same way again. This idea is so quietly powerful that it shaped modern psychology, influenced how we raise children, how therapists work, how coaches think, and yet most people have never heard of it. It doesn't have a flashy name. It doesn't promise a quick fix. But it might be the most honest and compassionate explanation of why we do what we do that has ever been put into words. So stay with me, because by the end of this, something might shift for you. The concept is called the inferiority feeling, not inferiority complex. We'll get to the difference, but the inferiority feeling. And Adler believed it was not a flaw, not a disorder, not something broken in you. He believed it was the universal human condition. Every single person who has ever lived has felt, at some point, small, inadequate, behind, not enough. Think about that for a moment. Every person. It's the most confident person you know, the most successful. It's the most seemingly put together. Underneath, at some point, they have felt exactly what you have felt. Adler came to this insight not from abstract theory, but from observation. He watched people. He listened. And he noticed a pattern so consistent, so fundamental, that he built an entire psychology around it. We are born helpless, completely, utterly dependent. A newborn cannot feed itself, cannot move itself, cannot communicate in language. It exists in a world of giants, parents, siblings, adults who can do everything the child cannot. And the child feels this. Not in a conscious, intellectual way, but in a deep, wordless, felt sense. I am small. They are big. I cannot do what they can do. This is the origin of the inferiority feeling. It is not taught. It is not created by bad parenting or difficult circumstances, though those can intensify it. It arises simply from being human, from the gap between what we are and what we sense we could or should be. And here is where Adler's genius reveals itself. Because he didn't stop there. He didn't say, well, too bad, we're all broken. He said something far more interesting. He said this feeling is the engine of everything. Every human being, in response to the inferiority feeling, develops what Adler called a striving for superiority. But don't let that word mislead you. He didn't mean superiority over other people. He meant a striving upward, toward mastery, toward meaning, toward wholeness. The child who cannot walk yet strives to walk. The person who feels unloved strives to find connection. The one who feels powerless finds ways to feel capable. We are, at our core, creatures of compensation. And that is not a weakness. That is the most human thing about us. This is why understanding Adler matters. Because once you see it everywhere. And more importantly, you start to see yourself with different eyes. Take someone who works obsessively, who never stops, never rests, always needs to achieve more. From the outside, we might admire this. Or we might worry about it. But through Adler's lens, we ask, what are they compensating for? What early feeling of inadequacy is driving the engine? It doesn't make their success less real, but it reveals the source. Or take someone who is always the loudest in the room, who interrupts, who dominates conversations, who needs to be seen. Again, not a flaw, but a strategy. A deeply human attempt to overcome a felt smallness by taking up more space. Or someone who never tries, who avoids challenges, stays in the background, says, I'm just not that kind of person. This, too, is a response to the inferiority feeling, but instead of overcompensating, they have protected themselves from the risk of failing. Because if you never try, you can never be proved inadequate. It's painful logic, but it's logic. All three of these people are doing the same thing. They are responding to the same original wound. They just chose different paths. And this is where Adler offers us something rare in psychology, something almost like grace. He doesn't pathologize. He doesn't look at human behavior and say, "That's sick, that's broken, that needs to be fixed." He looks at it and says, "That makes sense. Given what you felt and when you felt it, of course you developed this strategy. Of course, there is something deeply relieving about that." Now, the inferiority complex, which is different from the inferiority feeling, arises when the feeling becomes overwhelming, when the striving stops being healthy and becomes rigid, compulsive, or self-defeating, when someone is so gripped by the sense of not being enough that they can no longer function freely. This is the complex. And even here, Adler's view is compassionate. The complex is not a character flaw. It is a wound that never healed properly, a strategy that got stuck. But here is what matters most, and this is the part I want you to carry with you. Adler believed that the inferiority feeling, when used well, when it is met not with shame but with courage, becomes the source of all human growth. Every artist who ever created something beautiful did so because they felt the gap between what existed and what could exist. Every scientist, every teacher, every parent who tried to do better than their own parents, all of it driven by that original striving. The feeling is not your enemy, 'tis your signal. When you feel that quiet ache of not being enough, it is not evidence that you are broken. It is evidence that you are human, and it is an invitation to grow, to connect, to contribute. Adler had a concept he called social interest, or Gemeinschaftsgefühl in German. And he believed it was the true measure of psychological health, not how confident you feel, not how successful you are, but how connected you are to something beyond yourself. How much your striving is oriented not just toward personal gain, but toward the good of others, toward community, toward life. He believed that the healthiest human beings are those who have learned to channel their striving into contribution, who have transformed the wound of inadequacy into the gift of empathy. Because if you know what it feels like to struggle, and you do, you know what it feels like for others. And that knowledge is the beginning of genuine human connection. This is why Adler's psychology is, at its heart, not just a clinical framework, but an ethical one. He wasn't just asking, how do we fix people? He was asking, how do we help people live well? And his answer was, by helping them feel less alone in their struggle, more courageous in their striving, and more connected to the world around them. So what does this mean for you, practically? The next time you feel that familiar ache, the comparison, the doubt, the sense that everyone else has figured something out that you haven't, try something different. Instead of fighting it or running from it, just notice it, name it. There it is, the feeling. And then ask, gently, what is this feeling trying to move me toward? What would it look like to respond with courage rather than with avoidance or overcompensation? You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be free of the feeling. Adler himself never suggested that was the goal. The goal is not to eliminate the wound, but to understand it well enough that it stops driving you unconsciously and starts informing you wisely. There is a kind of freedom in that. Not the loud, triumphant kind, the quiet kind. The kind that comes from finally understanding why you are the way you are, and realizing that it makes sense. That you make sense. Alfred Adler spent his life listening to people who believed they were fundamentally broken. And over again, he told them, you are not broken. You are responding. You are striving. You are human. And that in a world that is very quick to pathologize, to label, to divide people into the healthy and the damaged, that might be the most radical and most healing thing a person can hear. You are not broken. You are responding. And now that you know that, the question becomes, what do you want to strive toward? If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Don't forget to like the video, and if you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.